Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Beats with Kelly Kennedy, where we like to bring you the information that teaches you how your body really works, as well as bringing it to you by naturally oriented therapists, medically enlightened doctors and specialists who are mostly my incredible friends and colleagues that I am blessed to travel the world around and have been educated and continue to be educated and have a lot of fun as well with what I affectionately call my tribe. And Dr. Joe Carchedi is one of those incredible tribe members that actually worked with True Wellness for 5 years physically in our space. So there's a lot of camaraderie between the two of us, as you're certainly going to hear in this episode today. And something that Dr. Carchedi and I are going to talk about is very personal and very intimate, and yet he brings such incredible enlightenment to this incredible subject matter. And I'm looking forward to everybody taking part in listening today and perhaps taking some notes and even reaching out to Dr. Carchedi if this is something that you find yourself dealing with. And what we're talking about is really the health and wellness of the vagina and our sexual intimacy as women, which is not a subject matter that we often talk about. And we are so happy to bring this episode to you today. And so please really enjoy listening to this to the end. And I do appreciate all the comments that you sent, that you give us. So keep doing that, please, if you feel inclined to. And enjoy Dr. Joe Carchedi on today's episodes of The Beats. Welcome to The Beats, and I'm not going to be able to do this one today without laughing, I can already tell you, because Dr. Joe Carchedi, who's our guest, is one of the doctors that I've actually had the pleasure of working with probably the longest in my career of this biological medicine. Dr. Joe Carchedi is here in the Pennsylvania area. He's an internist by trade, but as he said many years ago when we met him, he went from the dark side to the light side and started to understand the energy behind medicine. And he is a brilliant doctor. He's worked in emergency medicine in this area, as well as, like I said, a family internist. And Dr. Carchedi and myself and I worked together for about 5 years here at True Wellness. And one of the things that Dr. Carchedi is Italian, obviously, Carchedi, and I am not Italian. And so there was a lot of talking with our hands and a lot of loud conversations in our office. And the one resounding thing that Carchedi always said to me was, I have never talked about sex more than I've been in your office. True. And he says true. And so I said, it's about 3-4 weeks ago, I'm in his office getting an IV, and I look over in the corner, I go, Dr. Carchedi, what is that? He goes, oh, that's about female pleasure. And I was like, wait a second, what are you talking about? Let's do a podcast about this. So I know that we're going to have a lot of fun today. And on all honesty, this is a very serious topic. As those of you who know that I know how the body works is the innate intelligence, the healing force inside us can be created when we pleasure ourselves, when we have orgasms, when we spend time in nature, when we eat good organic food. And it is a part of our health to be healthy with our sex life, with having orgasms, with having intimacy. It's not just about sex, it's about intimacy. And so Dr. Joe Carchedi, the internist here from the Philadelphia area, please enlighten us as to what you know about this world. And I know you've been working in research, in all honesty, in this world for quite a bit. So first of all, thank you for joining the podcast. I'm a little less formal than most with Dr. Carchedi. So, but he's the best. Dr. Carchedi is the best. We still send clients to him for IVs, for neural therapies, for general support, whether that's, running blood work or lab work or whatever. We still consider him a part of our team, even though we are now located in separate businesses and we can't slap each other around with our hands anymore. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Carchedi. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It's actual pleasure. It's always good to speak to you, by the way. We always had this interesting relationship, we feed off each other, which has always been good throughout these years itself. And you're right about the fact that, when I was there with your office, I've never spoken more about sex and things of that nature when you were around, which actually was kind of interesting because I'll be honest with you, when I first started in internal medicine, and then I just segued into emergency medicine, you never have the opportunity to speak about things that of this nature. it's human nature to be kind of wary about talking about sex, and from that perspective. So now I'm in a space, I'm in a really wonderful place where I actually talk a little bit about everything, and I always devote a segment to basically about intimate wellness, whether it be male or female. And in this context, intimate wellness for females is very, very important, because we as individuals, we don't communicate that at all. And it's very interesting now that I'm asking these questions. I have found lots of women that have issues that, when asked nicely and openly, with no judgment at all, they have problems. And I go to the point and I ask them, actually very interesting, I've always asked them what gives them joy. That's one thing that I introduced to the questions, and then what they do for themselves. And inevitably, one way or another, when I go down this path, I firmly believe now, I believed before, but I never asked the question, was the fact that intimacy, sex, and the difference between sexes is a very, very important aspect of human adult behavior. It's very, very important because of the fact not only are the acts and what transpires very, very helpful for the individual, but also biochemically it helps. I mean, we have found that when there is intimacy or even hugging, hugging has been known to increase the immune system. Orgasmic responses have been known to increase oxytocin, the love hormone, including dopamine, the one that gives us gratification. It's like running a marathon and finishing up, and you feel so good about it. It's like on the top of the mountain. Those things of actual sexual behavior are very, very positive, and that only helps our immune system, especially important now these days because of the COVID issue, but also it helps our well-being. We sleep better. We relax better. We are less likely to be irritated. An individual that has a wonderful interaction with their partner, okay, is less likely to yell back. I would like to say the B word, but I didn't. But from that standpoint, and those things are really, really helpful. And by asking these questions to my female patients, they relate them to me, this, and this, and I say, okay, and we address them to my limitations that I'm able to do it in the office, obviously, because I am not a sex therapist, but I do the introduction and ask the appropriate questions. My job when I speak to people about these things is basically all based upon the biological aspect, the physiological aspect, and what we can do to have you return to a normal state, a balanced state, a homeostatic state. And that's the whole purpose of my approaching these discussions and how I ask them to get solutions.
Well, thank you for that clarity. And I think that one of the things that stood out for me in what you said was the communication is key. And that one of the questions we always ask, and I'm not a sex therapist either, obviously, but I do find, and we've always asked, like, what is your joy? Where do you come from? And I found that through the course of 20 years of doing this, there are a lot of women that sit on our table that either, they've had their children and now they have vaginal dryness, or they don't have the libido, or they don't have the desire. They find it hard to get out of their minds, or they're too tired, or and you're right. It's just not talked about. But I can turn on the television, not that I do, but I know that you can turn on the television and you can see erectile dysfunction ads one after another. And, the woman, Mickey Agarwal, who created the Tushy, which is for women, and she created the bidet, is what it's called, the Tushy, and she also created these, she's from Cornell.
Famous Cornell. Yeah.
And she's very famous, and she's on Mark Hyman's show all the time, and she's created underwear for women. And what she found is that in New York City, they tried to limit her vision on all the billboards, but because nobody wants to talk about periods, nobody wants to talk about women having sex or cleaning butts, they just want to talk about erectile dysfunction all day long. And I think this is one of the major keys is when Dr. Carchedi and I started working together, it was uncomfortable for him. It was uncomfortable for me to talk about it with this man that I didn't know in front of clients, right? And by the end of 4 or 5 years, we became very comfortable, to the point, I will never forget it, that he pulled out his prescription pad and wrote a prescription to a client for a gallon of olive oil for her husband to help them have better intimacy with lubrication. That was before he had his special lubrication that he knows about. But, you know, it really translated to this beautiful space, as you beautifully put earlier, that has allowed an entire segment of people to be addressed by you, by a medical professional, that when they walk in with whatever ailment they have, now this holistic component is also looked at. And I honestly don't know a lot of people that talk about this, if a handful in the United States, in the medical professionals that aren't specialists in the sex world. Would you disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't disagree at all. I mean, we as human beings are very, very dismissive of it, because it's ironic. We as a society, if we think about the way human behavior is, when we're born, everyone looks at the genitals. Oh, how cute, how cute. When you're old, when you're 80 or 90, you don't care, so you let everything hang out. Okay, but in between, we as adults, we have a very, very puritanistic society. Even though we have pornography out there, we are very, very puritanistic, and it doesn't get spoken about. And when you get someone, and as you just said, I'm more comfortable about it now, with no criticism and nothing otherwise, that I ask them about it, and people say, well, a number of women says, thank you for asking me that, because I'm able to address those particular issues and give them some insight and some tools to get to where they need to be. Now, as adults, we don't talk about it because it's a taboo area. But, you know, once you're 18, it's adult human behavior. And yes, it's associated with reproduction, but there's also a lot of other things that are associated with it from a biological standpoint. It's unfortunate that not every society today, the mother or someone in the family unit talks to the young lady by saying, listen, you're going to have a period one day. It's going to be this, this, and this, and this. Even today, girls are freaked out. They're in school and blood is going down their legs. It's just terrible. And they get bullied and they get really, really traumatized itself. But once that happens, even as adults who have partners or get married, it's still not enough openness to actually ask the question, what do you think? What do you like? What don't you like itself? And that goes for both partners, by the way. It's not about the actual control issue. It's the fact that we as human beings have an equal share in trying to help each other and participate with each other. Because the beauty of the intimacy of two human beings, a male and a female, is actually wondrous. Not only is the fact that it helps create children, but it's also the pleasure aspect of it itself. As I just mentioned, there's a lot of biochemicals going on and physiology going on itself. So it's very, very important to understand that. Now, most women, I'm hoping, but it's not always the case, in their 20s, I would like to mention that they really need to know their anatomy. Okay, yes, male anatomy is external, but female anatomy is internal. And whether they're afraid of looking at themselves, yes, they are now with social media, which is not really the anatomical correct thing to do, but they're educating some women to that aspect to make them understand where they're coming from. With that specific thing in mind, it's very, very interesting to understand that there is only one human organ that we know of in the human species that's specifically designed for pleasure.
And that's its only function.
That is its only function.
Everybody's calling you right now. That's not even a live podcast, and they're calling you right now because they want to know what it is.
Well, I mean, actually, no, not too many people know about it, but the fact of the matter is the clitoris, okay, is the only anatomical organ in the human species that's solely designed for pleasure itself. Now, there are offshoots of the nerve roots that connect to the brain when stimulated that will increase lubrication in the vaginal canal. And that's obviously for intercourse from that perspective. But the fact of the matter is that is the only function. The penis has a dual function, but it's not designed for pleasure. It's designed for urination, and it's designed for reproduction. It's not designed for that sole purpose. So the females have the unique opportunity to understand this. And this is a wonderful idea. So, oh, wow, I didn't know that. So let's investigate that further. Now, if you really look at the anatomy of the clitoris, it's not that little, as they say, bean or that little head that comes out of the entrance of the vaginal area itself. It's actually about 6 inches long. And it actually starts from the beginning, and there's two like leaves, one to the left and one to the right, that goes along and under the internal, what they call the labia minora, internal. But the most sensitive portion, 2,000 to 4,000 nerve roots on that little thing at the size of actually the tip of a pen.
Pen, right. Wow.
Okay. Now there's a little bit of diversity. Some women have larger, some women have smaller, like men. Some women have bigger, some women have smaller. But the fact of the matter is there's the same number of innervations there. So with that in mind, those things convey to the brain how for lubrication, as well as the feeling of pleasure itself. And when there is an orgasmic response, it engorges, just like the glans, penis in the male. And therefore, it sends receptors to the brain. Women, being very, very mental in their intimacy, they have this feedback loop that they are able to arrive at an orgasmic response. Now, you can actually say, well, what about also the Grafenberg spot or the G spot itself? That's a spot in the beginning of the internal upper roof of the vaginal canal, which is reportedly to have other nerve endings, but not as sensitive as the clitoral area. The majority of women will get orgasmic response with stimulation of the clitoris itself. Not as many women with either insertion and or stimulation of the Grafenberg spot or the G spot itself. So that's a very, very important thing to understand. Now, there's all variations from one woman to another itself, but these things during the reproductive years, during the menstrual years, okay, they work effectively. Women should avail themselves of it, and every woman is different. Short of suggesting, okay, in the early years, and saying, well, if you don't think you've had an orgasm, go find out what your anatomy is like, stimulate it, and do it in the privacy of yourself. Now, we have proven that if you don't masturbate, it's not good for you. Males and female. So masturbation is a positive thing.
So it's really good for you to masturbate because it physiologically changes you. And if you don't do it, it's really bad for you.
It's detrimental to you. Now, let me be clear here.
I'm like, first of all, have you ever heard me so quiet? No, none of you have heard me so quiet, because you can see why Dr. Carchedi and I work together. And I'm like elated over here at what he's talking about, the anatomy, everything. But what he just said is so vital. It's what we've said for years. Not having good relations, not having intimacy, not creating that connection is detrimental to your health.
It is. It actually is. And by the way, we're focusing on the genital urinary system. But when I'm talking about this, I'm talking total body health. I'm talking basically the more relaxed one person is, the less likely they will fall. They will break a bone. The less likely they will get pulled muscles. The less likely they'll sleep better. I mean, all those things are the entire total body itself. Now, don't get me wrong now. I'm not saying be consumed with one act itself. However, it's very, very beneficial. Some individuals like it more and some like it less. Now, there are ways to actually access those areas, knowing what your anatomy is like, on how to stimulate those things. Actually, you told me one that I don't want to promote one product over another itself, because there's a lot of different products out there. But
that one, yeah.
That one we're talking about, but that's very, very helpful as far as that is concerned. So, but
talking about a vibrator that I used to recommend all the time because it replicates a tongue instead of a penis, and so I recommend it to a lot of clients. I make no money off of this. I have no kick in the game. I just know as a woman, when I was introduced to it about a decade ago, I go, oh, finally somebody thought about a vibrator with a tongue instead of a penis because of what he said. I knew from my own anatomy, from looking at it with a mirror as a child. When I was 10 years old, I used to take a mirror and look at it. And I'm really psyched that my whole family started listening to my podcast now. Can't wait for them to hear this one. My uncles, everybody, it's going to be great. But anyway, in all honesty, I did start to look at it because I didn't know how it worked and I wanted to understand that. And then many years later, I was like, okay, I mean, I didn't know this physiologically. I just knew it from my own clinical experience that I way orgasmed easier clitorally than I did vaginally. And so I never understood vibrators that looked like penises because that never was the most successful way to do it. When the vibrator came out that looked like a tongue, I was like, well, there you go. That makes all the sense in the world. So anyway, total sidetrack. What were you saying, Dr. Carchedi?
No, I mean, that's important because that way, in that context alone, understanding the physiological mechanism on how to stimulate the external, the clitoral area itself, this specific toy that we're talking about resembles a vibratory type of scenario, which is most beneficial for most women itself. And it's not an in and out or friction type thing. It's more a circular type motion itself. Now, there's a lot of things out there. Now, actually, we've studied this the last 20 years. The actually gynecologist finally has stated, oh my gosh, we think we thought that intravaginal penetration was the way to go. And they found out now in the last 15, 20 years that this organ itself is designed for pleasure. And that's how you go about addressing it and everything else. So that needs to be, people need to feel comfortable of their own, of themselves from that aspect. And you can do it from manually from yourself. So that's we're talking about now the formative years, the years of the menstrual period. Periods happen. People have different periods of self. I also found that from my experience from having done the levels of hormone levels, that the hormone levels stabilize better with less premenstrual effects like mood disorders or cramping or anything of the sort when there is a frequency of intimacy from that
stimulation.
That
brought up something I was going to ask you about, which is exactly that, hormonal shifts. Like so many women sit on our table and complain about their hormones. My hormones aren't balanced. My hormones are balanced. And my next question is, well, when was the last time you had sex? Well, I don't know, months ago. Well, then how are you expecting your hormones to be in balance if you haven't had sex in months? Right. And I firmly believe that that's like, every once in a while, you need a vitamin D injection or something. Ha ha ha. You need some kind of, anybody get that joke?
We got it.
You need some, and it doesn't have to be that, obviously. Whatever your sexual preference is what it is. That's fine. It's not about that. It's about getting that release that creates that endorphin hit, right? That, like you said, like when you're running a marathon and you just feel amazing, like, let's really talk about what it feels like to have an orgasm. Like when you're done, you're exhausted and energized. You're like happy and elated and almost tearful and crying. Your body, your physical body feels like excited and want to burn energy, but like fatigued from the muscles being overstimulated all at the same time. And you're just like a bag of mush and you're totally relaxed and literally nothing can stress you out at that very few moments right after having an orgasm. There's not much that stresses you out. You're truly enthusiastic. And the definition of enthusiasm is entheos, if you break it up, the Greek word, which means God within, meaning that you're now bringing that healing energy inside you and spontaneously creating a huge upregulation of not only the endorphins, the endobionts, which is contributing to your immune system, which why it helps your immune system is it's got to decrease cortisol. Like we're talking about all the helping dopamine, helping serotonin, helping oxytocin. Well, then by the nature, it's got to decrease cortisol, doesn't it?
Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. For sure. I mean, like
the stress hormones and helps with happy hormones.
Yes. It increases REM sleep, which is the part of sleep for rejuvenation of your neurotransmitters, of all your nighttime hormones, your daytime hormones, and including all your neurotransmitters. So cortisol goes down. All those things work in conjunction. Now, life is very, very complex, And they all come into web-like structures themselves. But this is a very, very important component of being an adult and very, very helpful from that standpoint. Our life right now is under a lot of stress because of the COVID. We're under a lot of stress because cabin fever. We're under a lot of stress because we have partners and families and things are happening, whatever. We've been under stress because of the winter. Now the spring's coming along. Things are going to get better from that perspective. So all these things come into play. And this is one aspect that I think is fairly important that it needs to be addressed. Yes, you can address disease. You can address other factors, but there's also a part of it that needs to be addressed to make sure that we as human beings do the right thing and have a good, healthy, positive sexual life itself. Now, with that in mind, there's also the factor is our sexual history itself also will vary between pregnancy and not. The resetting of the hormones, you made a very, very good point. These things vary, okay? I find out in my practice if I need to do something like that, never, ever, ever take anything without measuring it. I don't like the idea personally, like, you know, you have to go see a gynecologist for a birth control pill, or because you're having hot flashes for whatever reason, and nobody measures anything. You want to know where you're at. I think that's fairly important. And then you can adjust accordingly. Our society is too much pill oriented and go for something itself.
Well, this is, I would like to make a distinction and pat you on the back, because that is one of the reasons that we work together for so long, is because you're not just a doctor, you're a scientist. And there's a big distinction and difference between that. You know, doctors just write, read, memorize, and a lot of doctors, I should say every doctor, a lot of doctors just write, read, memorize. They're more like clerks. You walk in with this symptom, they look in their PDR and go, oh, that symptom, I give you these drugs, that drug didn't work, I'll give you the next drug, whereas you come from a different perspective and scientifically, and you always did that. Whenever I said to you, can we put them on vitamin D? The real vitamin D, D3, like, you know, that you get from eating for your immune system. Not my joke of vitamin D, but you're always the same answer, always. Well, I don't know. What's the level? Let's check it. I'm like, well, okay, we'll check it. Like, and same with thyroid. You're like, clients walk in and like, okay, Dr. Carchedi, you know, they've been on thyroid medication. Can you just write the script? Can you help them get their next dose? He's like, well, when was the last time their thyroid levels were checked? Because I don't know if it needs to alter it. And one of the things he was keen to and privy to is that we were changing their physiology, handling their silver fillings, moving the lymph, changing their physiology. So that means everything's going to change. And you don't just write a script because you've always been on the same thyroid medication. It might change because you're going to change.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely. It's so true. It's that I'm at least I'm able, different to other physicians or other practitioners, as you just said, let's prove it. Let's find out. Because I have found when somebody tells me the majority, I feel that I'm low in this, and then I wind up doing it afterwards, then I validate them. But when you see something that's validated, it makes you feel better and say, oh, I was right. You know, I do feel blah. I think my iron is low or my thyroid is low or whatever it may be from that perspective. Now, there's also, in this context that we're talking about, hormones. I mean, there's a lot of times that either due to pregnancy and or our lifestyle choices or bad decisions in our choices, whatever, our hormones don't act normally as they normally would. And you need to have some type of support. And in this context, I'm using male or female in this context. And it's always good to find out where you're at in relation to those type of things themselves. Now, I do want to say that as you go through the active reproductive years and you have a good, healthy life, sex life from that perspective, it's also good to find out that while things happen, you get to the point where in nature, we get older, okay? And it's inevitable that after 40 or 50 years old, that the active receptors that accept the sex hormones don't react as reliably as they do from before. And it starts to settle down and you start to get symptoms or other issues that are not consistent with the way you were previously. A lot of women in this context, they lubricate very, very easily. They get aroused very easily. They have no hot flashes. Their skin, hair, and nails are fine. I mean, you don't have to worry anything about that. And all of a sudden, everything changes. And it's not like accepted. One thing I want to say, I don't want any woman out there to accept That's the way it is. It is wrong. Question it. Ask him. You are not abnormal. You are normal. There's more people that are normal that have this than people that don't. So don't just say, well, that's because you're getting old.
It's natural that if there's something that your body's missing, that to have symptoms like this, and it's not just the way it's supposed to be because you're old. What he's saying is there's options, there's things you can do, and here's what we can do. So let's talk about it. Are we going to talk about the one thing in the corner? Because I want to talk
Well, yeah, I was going to get, that's what I was.
the thing in the corner that started this whole conversation.
So with that in mind, besides actually asking a person about what their sexuality is like, the relationship with their partner, the communication issue and everything else, whatever, we have found that due to the fact that, now I want to give a little bit of science for about a minute here, is the fact that there are estrogen receptors and progesterone receptors in the body, in the ovaries themselves, and also in the stress gland, the adrenal gland. When these levels start dropping, you don't have the same levels as before, and therefore the body does not react as appropriately. So what happens is that things that are likely to change, skin, hair, and nails, won't be developing itself. The hair falls out, it thins out, the skin, you're not as your skin dries out more quickly, the nails don't grow as well. And also the fact the musculature is not the same. Your libido changes because of the fact that the levels start dropping. And then there's the issue of when you get to the point that if you do have some type of intimacy itself, whatever, that you're not as receptive to your partner as once before, because the cells of the canal don't create as much lubrication as it would otherwise. And it's not that the clitoris is less receptive, it's just that that connection between the clitoris and the brain is not as 100% as it used to be, and it doesn't react and does what it used to do from before. So you have tissues that are not as optimized. What you were at 20, you're not the same at 45. So there are things that we can do to support, okay, the for lack of other words, the rejuvenation, okay, of the cells, okay, to make it back so it works more optimally. Because women have told me it's not that yes, it is that they don't have intimacy because it's dry and they don't like it itself. But the fact of the matter is, when they're not having any intimacy and they have the vagina is dry, it's irritating to them and it's inflammatory and everything else itself. That tells me to do one thing. Now, I was talking many years ago, as I spoke to you, about olive oil, but we have found now the most natural, wonderful lubricant now that's pretty much the greatest in the world is organic, extra virgin coconut oil, okay? And that it's a wonderful lubricant. It's natural, it's healthy, and it creates a lubricating scenario in actually during intimacy itself for both partners. Now, if there still are cells that are not responding to the estrogen levels because the estrogen goes down, we can give extra good estrogen. Good estrogen is called estriol, and there's a lot of bad estrogens. Bad estrogens are not good. They cause breast cancer. They cause cervical and ovarian. You don't want that. You want the good estrogens, and that will hopefully plump up the cells itself. We happen to have now, and I've done a lot of research for the last year and a half, a wonderful red laser product that is designed specifically to help rejuvenate the entrance of the vaginal area, including the labia, as far as the entrance, to replump those cells so the lubrication comes back with maybe a little bit of help of coconut oil and things of that nature. Now, some people can't do coconut, but there's other lubricants out there from that perspective. But I think that the most natural one is coconut because it breaks down easy itself. This product is really cool because I've given it to women, and from my practitioner standpoint, when you get a call 30 days later, and I quote, I said, "Holy crap, doctor, you would not believe this." And I said, oh, okay, I'm glad. And it's like I was able to help one person, and then I'm having like a lot of people come to me now. This product has a lot of good support. There are consultations and things you can go on the internet to help you understand. Actually, I'll show it to you for a second. I know what it looks like, okay, but it's designed.
And that's why it attracted me, because I saw it over in the corner. I said, Dr. Joe, what the heck is going on? Are you selling dildos now?
No, I'm not. This
Like,
is
not at all.
this
But
is
that's it. So those that aren't on the video, you need to go look at the video to see what it looks like.
right now. If I can turn
like
this,
a penetratable situation, but it's about light, right? Because
it is. It is. It's actually it's about that.
Every single podcast, cells communicate by light.
And it's red light. It's healing light. Okay.
And frequency that actually incites the mitochondria, the ATP, to regenerate the cells and to recuperate the cells.
Right, exactly. And this area here, right here, is where the light comes out. And I can't be able to do it. When I want to do it, I can't do it. But anyway, right here is where, and this is not designed as a vibrator. It's designed for this healing light for the area, for the cells to heal itself.
And so when women use this and they have dryness, it helps regenerate, to help lubricate, to help.
By the way, once a week, you can do it every day if you want to.
See how we talk over each other all the time? Do you see why we don't work in the same office? What did you say?
No, it's actually, you don't have to do this every day. I mean, you can do this for about a week or two every day and then back off once a week or whatever. And if there's problems or issues on the functioning of it, it's really, really interesting. It's called VFit, okay? And you could obviously understand what the V stands for. And basically it's there to recreate the normal physiology of a woman. So
to regenerate that. So, I'm 47 years old. I thought I was going through perimenopause, but it's not. It's really just, I'm bleeding at every single moon, new moon, full moon. I think it's an energetic, because I'm starting so many things right now. The universe is just like, oh yeah, you're starting all new kind of things. So that's fine. Let's say I don't have any issues. This would still benefit me, would it not?
Absolutely would benefit me.
So
sure.
you want to sign
it just so happens,
my B12.
I need to be transparent. It just so happens this also vibrates, but that's not the purpose. Okay, no. It's the red light for the healing structure itself. But there are also they have forums and they have lectures to help every woman, because every woman's different.
Well, yeah, and I'm thinking about, like, after I had Silas, I won't say have a fallen uterus, but it definitely feels at different times of the month that my uterus is in a different place than it used to be. And imagine if this is going to help the communication for inside the vaginal wall, it's going to help the communication everywhere, right? So like
Absolutely.
By doing that, it could help so many things.
So what you just described is called pelvic floor dysfunction. And that's due to pregnancy, pressure, things of that nature. And some women it's worse, some women it's okay. But all those type of things help. And this is like doing Kegel exercises turbocharged.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
it's the light doing the Kegels for you, because it's educating the cells. Because I've learned, we did a podcast about this, I don't know, beginning of last year, about Kegels and the different types of Kegels that there are. And who knew? I didn't know that there was different type of Kegels till then you know. But this is a way to get your body to have that exercise, if you will, that communication, that nerve regenerated, so that it properly then conducts and regulates the way it should, so that you can continue have a nice long intimate life full of joy.
It's called re-education.
Re-education.
Because your body was educated in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and it kind of lost it a little bit, and now you're re-educating it to be back where you are. Now that leads, as we go further, like most people say, ooh, my grandfather and my grandmother have sex. It is a normal process for anybody of any age as an adult itself. We shouldn't be ashamed of it. And I really hope that if somebody does have a wonderful, healthy, balanced sexual life until their 70s and 80s, okay, that's nothing but good.
That we celebrate that we celebrate this. Exactly. Because, I know a lot of people want to know how to find you. And I want everybody to know that even if you're not in Pennsylvania, Dr. Carchedi does a lot of telemedicine, and you can consult with him from long distances, because I know from doing what I do that this is opportunity for people to talk about something they've never talked about. And in all honesty, I'm very psyched that we had a male doctor come in and talk about this, not a female doctor, because I think that's great for us to have this communication between the two sexes, because it definitely pushes some envelopes. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would be like, wow, I can't believe it's not a female doctor talking about it. It crossed my mind earlier. Like, I'm so psyched that it's you and I, Dr. Carchedi, because it brings that balance in to go, there's nothing unusual here. There's nothing actually to laugh about. There's nothing. This is a natural function that gives us life in every single way. Yes, it creates life, and it also gives us life. It's the source of life, is this instinct to connect together and create that enthusiastic orgasm that is life-giving, and it gives us health. And we employ each one and encourage each one of you to find out how your body works. If you don't, the anatomy lesson that Dr. Carchedi gave in the beginning, rewind, go look it up on BRMI and get a picture of the anatomy in front of you while he's explaining that. Get your mirror out. I swear to goodness, really do this, because this is so key. You know, how do you expect somebody else to get you off if you don't know how to get yourself off? That's not a medical term. That's just Kelly Kennedy speak. But like, we need to know how our bodies work. And if they're not working well, then there's amazing tools out there like the VFit, right? That's what's called VFit. Right. That can assist you, and wonderful, incredible doctors and practitioners like Dr. Carchedi that will help educate you and hold your hand, so to speak, along this path to help you get the result of what you want, which is to have a healthy, natural libido and release that allows you to feel relaxed so that you're not as breakable as he said, right? That was a key to what he said. We're more flexible the more relaxed we are. If we're real stiff and with no release, we're more breakable and more fragile. So we want to be more flexible, and this will enhance our immune system. Wow. From our heart to yours, Dr. Carchedi, what else do you want to say to the audience? What takeaway do you want to give them in regards to this amazing topic? And we have so many topics we could talk about. We're going to bring them back and talk about vitamin C and IVs, because he does them differently than most people do in the United States. It needs to be discussed as to why that's different. But what do you want to talk to them about this?
Well, I think the most important thing of everything, what we just talked about overall, I implore people to communicate. It's very, very important. We are so shy about it. There's nothing wrong with it. If you have somebody that's non-judgmental, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't judgmental, but I was skittish. And now I've gotten to the point that I can talk about it to support. We're here to support each other. And I'm here to, without judgment, without critique, to help somebody get them where they need to be and to communicate with not only the practitioner, but also the partner themselves to get to where they need to be. And, and in my office, my whole purpose is to give people tools. Once they have the tools, okay, for whatever it is, then they can guide their life in a very, very balanced, homeostatic way. And that's what I do. I get them to that position where they can use those tools and be happy and healthy. Okay, that's the most important. So when it's all said and done, we need to be happy, healthy, homeostatic. And I always kid around. I don't say this literally, but I just say it just for the concept. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. So, enjoy life, do what you need to do, okay, and enjoy it. Now, we are in difficult times, but even with these difficult times, we're still able to be healthy and do what we need to do for ourselves. Communication, communication, communication. That's the most important thing I would think. Now, I will like to mention, if anybody wants to contact me, you can feel free. And my telephone number.
They're calling you now. They're already on the phone, ready to reach out. We'll give it all in the show notes too, but it's jcarchedimd@gmail is his email. He has a website, isn't it? lowergwynedfunctionalmedicine.com.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I look it up all the time. I almost know the phone number by heart. lowergwynedfunctionalmedicine.com. Or you can abbreviate that, lgfunctionalmedicine.com. Right. And again, we're going to have all of this in our show notes. And what is, from our heart to yours, which is what the Beats is all about, because more than anybody, I love my needles. I love IVs. I love injections. I love, love, love that type of physical medicine. Yet at the same time, we've shifted, as you've watched us in the now we've known each other 8 years. Silas just turned 8. So Dr. Carchedi and I have known each other for 8.5 years. And in those 8.5 years, we've shifted completely away, not completely, I shouldn't say, but in our physical office, we've shifted away from the physical medicine and really helped people understand that if you relax and you open your heart, you know, that has more to do with medicine. What would be your message? If you could give one message out to the world, what would it be?
It's now you got me on a spot here.
I love putting Dr. Carchedi.
What I would, I would say, appreciate what you have. I have found that we as human beings, myself as a practitioner, myself as a male, myself as a family and everything else, whatever. I happened to see a movie the other day. I talked about this gentleman, I forget what it was called, that goes back in time, and he's about to pass away. And his only request was he wanted to go back in time to walk on the beach with his 12-year-old son. And it was a heartening thing that before he passed away, that's what he remembered itself. Appreciate the day. Enjoy the day. Don't be distraught. For whatever it's worth, I am totally against no television, no mass media, no social media. Enjoy your surroundings. Enjoy the food that you eat. The moon now was on last night was a full moon, and if you're into that field, you could have rejuvenated all your stones last night itself. I mean, all those type of things. The energy of the world, the energy of yourself is very, very positive. Use that to your benefit and appreciate it at the moment. It is so hard to do. It's so easy for me to say, and even I have difficulty with it. It's a way of being mindful. The energy of the universe is there. You just got to use it from what you can and do it to your benefit and be happy and smile, God. Please smile once a day. Tell yourself a joke, whatever. Your immune system will benefit from it, and you'll be less likely to get disease and live happily ever after.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carchedi. You know, we truly do love you. You are part of our family and always have been since the day we met you. And that continues. And that was a beautiful sentiment. And I know that if you're looking for Carchedi and he's not in his office, I can guarantee you where he is. If the sun is shining, he's on his bike enjoying, or he's in his kitchen cooking amazing food. Because those two things he just talked about are truly who he is. And I so appreciate your honesty and authenticity about it's a struggle for you. And, you know, every one of us, like, we all are human and we all are, you know, working through our stuff. But that's the beauty, is working with a team, with a tribe of people working together for a common goal to live a happy, healthy, prosperous life. Go and prosper, as he says. Go and prosper. So truly, thank you so much again, Dr. Carchedi, for your time today. And what an incredible topic. And I'm sure everybody that's listening to this resonates with you. Share this, because we know this is a topic that's not talked about enough with women in particular. And let's get the communication to be enhanced. Let's get men and women talking about it and change this world and bring up all of our happy hormones and decrease our stress, because that's really what it's about. Truly, from our heart to yours, with true heart, with true love in our hearts, Dr. Carchedi and I sign off at the Beats this episode. And thank you so much all for joining us. Have a blessed day.